My name is Jessica Turner, and I am 32 years old living in the beautiful and sometimes very strange city of Boulder, Colorado. If you have ever been to Boulder, you know that it is a place where people take two things very seriously, which are their outdoor hobbies and their organic gardens. I fit right into that world because I spend almost every waking hour that I am not working as a graphic designer tending to my backyard garden. My garden is my sanctuary and my pride and joy. I live in a quiet neighborhood where the houses are spaced out just enough to feel private, but close enough that you can smell what your neighbor is grilling for dinner. For the last 5 years, I have poured my heart and soul into a very specific hobby, which is growing the rarest and hottest chili peppers in the world. I am talking about peppers that make a regular jalapeno taste like a piece of candy. I grow Carolina Reapers and Trinidad Moruga scorpions, and a special hybrid I developed myself that I call the Boulder Burner. These peppers are not just food to me because they represent hours of soil testing and moisture control and careful pruning. They are also quite expensive to grow because the seeds are hard to find and the nutrients I use are top quality. Most of my neighbors are wonderful people who trade tomatoes for zucchini, but there is one person who has always been a thorn in my side, and her name is Brenda. Brenda is about 50 years old, and she is the self-appointed queen of our local homeowners association. She is the kind of person who walks around with a clipboard and tells you that your grass is a quarter of an inch too long or that your trash cans were left out for 2 hours past the limit. Brenda has always had a strange sense of entitlement when it comes to the neighborhood. She believes that because she has lived here the longest, she has a right to anything she sees. For a long time, we had a cold peace between us, but that changed during the hottest summer on record in Colorado. I had spent the entire spring preparing my pepper patch. I had installed a sophisticated drip irrigation system, and I was using a very expensive organic fertilizer that I had shipped in from a specialty farm. My Boulder burner peppers were finally starting to ripen, and they were beautiful. They were a deep and angry shade of red with bumpy skin that warned you just by looking at them that they were dangerous. One Tuesday morning, I went out to my garden with my morning coffee to check on the progress of my prize-winning plants, and I noticed something was wrong. Several of my largest and most mature peppers were simply gone. The stems had been cleanly cut with a pair of garden shears. I felt a knot in my stomach because those peppers were supposed to be the centerpiece of my entry for the upcoming regional chili festival. I thought maybe a squirrel or a raccoon had gotten to them, but animals do not usually use scissors, and they certainly do not eat peppers that are 2 million units on the Scoville heat scale. I decided to keep a close eye on the garden, but 2 days later, more peppers were missing. I was devastated and frustrated because I had spent months nurturing those plants. I decided to talk to my neighbors to see if they had seen anyone lurking in my yard. When I got to Brenda's house, she was sitting on her front porch sipping iced tea. I asked her if she had noticed anyone suspicious near my garden, and she gave me a very fake smile and told me that she had not seen a soul. However, I noticed something that made my blood boil. On her side table, there was a small bowl of what looked like my specialty peppers sliced up next to some crackers and cheese. I asked her where she got those peppers, and she laughed and said she picked them up at the local farmer's market. I knew she was lying because the farmer's market does not sell my specific hybrid. I felt a wave of anger wash over me, but I did not have any proof, so I just thanked her and walked away. I decided to install a security camera that was hidden in a birdhouse facing the garden. I thought this would solve the problem, but the next morning, I found that someone had draped a wet towel over the birdhouse before taking another handful of peppers. The thief was smart, and they knew exactly where I was looking. I tried to report the theft to the homeowners association, but Brenda is the treasurer of the board, and she told me that the association does not get involved in petty disputes over vegetables. She actually had the nerve to tell me that I should be more generous with my harvest since I have so much of it. This was the moment I knew for sure that it was her. She was not just stealing my peppers, but she was mocking me for it. I felt completely powerless because the police would not care about a few stolen peppers, and the neighborhood authorities were protecting the thief. I spent a week trying different things to stop her. I built a small fence, but she just reached over it. I put up signs that said the peppers were extremely hot and not for human consumption, but she must have thought I was bluffing. The breaking point came when the neighborhood announced a community potluck dinner to celebrate the end of summer. Brenda announced on the neighborhood's social media page that she would be bringing her famous spicy stuffed peppers and her award-winning 5-alarm chili. I knew exactly where she was planning to get the ingredients for those dishes. She was planning to use my hard work to win the praise of the entire neighborhood. I went to bed that night feeling defeated and like I wanted to just rip the plants out of the ground so she could not have them. But then I had a better idea. It was an idea that required a lot of patience and a bit of scientific knowledge. I realized that if Brenda wanted my peppers so badly, I should give her exactly what she wanted, but with a little surprise. I have a second small greenhouse in my basement where I conduct my more sensitive experiments. I had been working on a new strain of pepper that I had not yet moved outside. This pepper was a cross between a Carolina Reaper and a Pepper X, which is currently one of the hottest substances known to man. But I had also been experimenting with a very specific type of clear, tasteless oil that is derived from the purest capsaicin extract. This oil is so potent that a single drop can make a gallon of water feel like it is boiling. I took several of my most innocent-looking peppers from the basement. These were peppers that I had bred to look exactly like mild shishito peppers. They were green and long and looked like they would be perfect for frying in a little bit of olive oil. I used a tiny needle to inject a concentrated amount of the capsaicin oil into the core of these peppers. From the outside, they looked perfectly normal and harmless, but on the inside they were essentially chemical weapons. I went out to my garden in the middle of the night and I carefully tied these peppers onto the stems of my regular plants using a bit of green gardening wire that was invisible in the dark. I placed them right at the front where they were the easiest to reach. I knew that Brenda would see them and think I had started a new crop of mild peppers for the potluck. I also made sure to leave my garden gate slightly unlatched to make it even more tempting for her. The next morning I woke up and checked the garden, and sure enough the bait had been taken. The injected peppers were gone. I felt a mix of guilt and excitement, but I reminded myself that Brenda was a thief who had been stealing from me for weeks. The day of the community potluck arrived, and the entire neighborhood gathered at the local park. There were picnic tables covered in potato salad and fried chicken and various desserts. Brenda arrived looking very proud of herself, carrying 2 large slow cookers and a tray of stuffed peppers. She set them down in the center of the table and put a large sign in front of them that said Brenda's famous hot and spicy delights. She was wearing a shirt that said Spice Queen, and she was telling everyone how she had spent all night preparing the meal using ingredients from her own private garden. I stayed near the back of the crowd and filled my plate with some harmless coleslaw and a dinner roll. I watched as people started to line up for the food. Our neighbor, Mr. Henderson, who is a retired police officer and loves spicy food, was the first one to try Brenda's stuffed peppers. He took a big bite, and his face immediately turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. He did not say a word, but his eyes went wide, and he began to cough uncontrollably. He reached for a glass of water, but as anyone who eats hot peppers knows, water only makes the burn worse. He started gasping for air and pointed at the tray of peppers. Brenda laughed and told him that he just could not handle the heat of a real woman's cooking. She then took a large spoonful of her own chili, which I knew contained the rest of the injected peppers. She took a massive bite to show everyone how brave she was. For about 3 seconds she looked triumphant, but then the color drained from her face. She stopped chewing, and her hands started to shake. The capsaicin oil I had used does not hit you right away, because it has a delayed reaction that builds up until it feels like your entire mouth and throat are on fire. Brenda tried to swallow, but she could not. She grabbed a nearby carton of milk and started chugging it straight from the container, which was very much against her own rules of etiquette. The heat was so intense that she started to sweat through her shirt and tears were streaming down her face. She tried to speak, but all that came out was a high-pitched squeak. She fell to her knees and started fanning her mouth with her hands. At this point, the rest of the neighbors were starting to get worried. Some people had taken smaller bites of the stuffed peppers, and they were also starting to feel the effects. There was a frantic rush for the cooler full of drinks. Brenda was in genuine distress, and someone eventually called for the paramedics because she looked like she was having trouble breathing. When the ambulance arrived, the paramedics asked what she had eaten. I stepped forward and told them that I am a specialist gardener and that she might have accidentally eaten some experimental peppers that are not meant for human consumption. I explained that these peppers contain levels of capsaicin that can cause the throat to swell in people who are not used to them. Brenda looked at me with pure hatred in her eyes, but she could not say anything because she was being loaded onto a stretcher. The paramedics gave her some liquid antacid and oxygen, and they took her to the hospital for observation. After the ambulance left, the mood of the potluck was ruined. People were looking at the tray of peppers like it was a pile of snakes. I took the opportunity to speak to the head of the homeowners association, who was also there. I told him that I had been having a problem with someone stealing my experimental peppers from my backyard, and that I had put up signs warning that they were dangerous. I told him I felt terrible that Brenda had somehow gotten her hands on them, and that she must have mistaken them for something else. The head of the association looked at the empty stems in my garden later that day and realized that Brenda must have been the one trespassing on my property. Because Brenda had bragged about the peppers coming from her own garden, she had effectively trapped herself in a lie. If she admitted she stole them, she was a thief, and if she insisted she grew them, she was responsible for poisoning the neighborhood with dangerous plants. The fallout was even better than I expected. When Brenda got back from the hospital the next day, she was met with a notice from the homeowners association. It turned out that growing experimental and dangerous plants was a violation of the neighborhood safety codes, and since she had claimed to grow them herself, she was fined $500. Furthermore, many of the neighbors were furious with her for making them sick. Mr. Henderson was especially vocal about how she had almost caused him to have a heart attack. Brenda's reputation as the neighborhood queen was completely destroyed. She could no longer walk around with her clipboard and judge people because everyone just laughed and asked her if she wanted a glass of milk. She tried to blame me and said that I had poisoned her on purpose, but I simply pointed to my security camera footage. The footage showed her wearing a mask and a dark hoodie entering my garden in the middle of the night, but it was clear enough that everyone could recognize her signature walking style and the specific brand of gardening clogs she always wore. The video showed her purposefully ignoring my warning signs and cutting the peppers from the plants. I told the board that I would not press charges for trespassing if Brenda resigned from the homeowners association and stopped bothering me. She had no choice but to agree. Since then, my garden has been more productive than ever. I have added even more varieties of peppers, and I even started a small business selling my hot sauces at the local market. I call my flagship sauce Brenda's Bitter Regret, and it is a bestseller. Brenda mostly stays inside her house now, and when she does come out, she avoids my side of the street entirely. She even hired a landscaping company to take care of her yard because she says she cannot stand the sight of a garden anymore. Sometimes I see her looking out her window while I am watering my plants, and I just give her a friendly wave and hold up a bright red pepper. She usually closes her curtains immediately. It is funny how a little bit of heat can change the entire dynamic of a neighborhood. I learned that you do not have to be a loud or aggressive person to stand up for yourself. Sometimes you just have to let a person's own greed and entitlement lead them into a situation they cannot handle. My Boulder burners are thriving, and the air in our cul-de-sac feels a lot lighter now that the queen has been dethroned. I still grow the experimental peppers, but now I keep them in a locked greenhouse just to be safe. I do not want any more accidental trips to the hospital, but I do keep a small jar of that capsaicin oil in my kitchen cabinet as a reminder of the summer when the peppers fought back. It serves as a warning to anyone who thinks that being a neighbor means you can take whatever you want without asking. In the end, justice was served on a platter of stuffed peppers, and it was the most delicious thing I have ever tasted. I spent the rest of the autumn harvesting the rest of my crop, and the yield was incredible. I had enough peppers to make over 200 bottles of sauce. I decided to give a bottle to every neighbor except for Brenda. I gave Mr. Henderson a special mild version because he still enjoys the flavor, but his stomach cannot handle the intense heat anymore. He told me that he appreciated the gesture and that he was glad someone finally stood up to Brenda. The community potluck next year is already being planned, and the organizers have asked me to be the head of the food safety committee. I find that very ironic and satisfying. I spend my evenings now sitting on my back porch, watching the sunset over the mountains and listening to the quiet sounds of the neighborhood. The theft has stopped, and my garden is a place of peace again. I sometimes wonder if I went too far, but then I remember the smug look on Brenda's face when she thought she was stealing my hard work, and I realized that she got exactly what she deserved. If you're going to play with fire, you have to expect to get burned, and Brenda got burned in the most literal way possible. The story of the Great Pepper Incident of Boulder became a bit of a local legend, and now people from 3 streets over come by just to look at my garden from the sidewalk. They always ask if the peppers are really as hot as the stories say, and I just smile and tell them that they are plenty hot enough to teach a lesson. My life has returned to its normal routine of designing graphics and pruning leaves, but there is a new sense of respect from the people around me. I am no longer just the quiet girl with the garden, I am the woman you do not want to cross. It is a good feeling to have your boundaries respected, and it is even better to know that your hard work is safe. The seasons are changing now, and the first frost is expected soon, so I am busy preparing the plants for the winter. I will take some of the seeds and dry them out for next spring, and I am already thinking about what new hybrids I can create. Maybe I will make something even hotter next year just in case anyone else gets any bright ideas about helping themselves to my harvest. But for now, I am content with my garden and my spicy sauces and the quiet victory I won in the heat of the summer. The long version of every story usually has a hero and a villain, and in this story, I might not be a perfect hero, but I am definitely the one who stayed standing when the smoke cleared. Brenda learned that her power had limits, and I learned that I have the strength to protect what is mine. It is a lesson that will stay with me as long as I am planting seeds in the dirt of Colorado. I look forward to many more years of gardening and many more years of peace in my beautiful home. If you ever find yourself in Boulder and you smell something incredibly spicy in the air, you might be near my house. Just remember to stay on the sidewalk and admire the peppers from a distance, because they have a very protective owner who knows exactly how to handle a thief. The sun is going down now, and the air is getting chilly, so it is time to head inside and start working on a new design project. My life is good and my garden is safe, and that is all I ever really wanted. The story of the stolen peppers has a happy ending for me and a very painful one for Brenda, and I think that is exactly how it should be. Every time I open a jar of my spicy salsa and hear that satisfying pop of the vacuum seal, I think of that potluck, and I cannot help but smile. It was a long summer and a hard fight, but in the end the truth came out and the thief was caught. My advice to anyone else dealing with a neighborhood bully is to be creative and stay patient, because eventually they will trip over their own ego. And if they happen to be stealing your food, make sure the next bite they take is one they will never forget. That is the secret to a perfect revenge. It should be something that they do to themselves while you just provide the opportunity. I am going to enjoy my dinner now, and maybe I will add just a tiny bit of pepper flakes to my pasta for an extra kick. Life is short, and it is meant to be lived with a little bit of spice and a lot of justice. Good night, Boulder, and good night to all the gardeners out there, protecting their little slice of heaven from the people who do not know how to respect a boundary. May your soil be rich and your harvest be plentiful, and your peppers be hot enough to keep the villains at bay. I have spent a lot of time reflecting on this, and I realized that the best part was not the pain Brenda felt, but the fact that she can no longer hide behind her fake rules and her clipboard. She is exposed for who she really is, and that is the ultimate victory in any conflict. I am proud of my garden, and I am proud of myself for how I handled the situation. It was a long road to get here, but I would do it all over again if I had to, because some things are worth fighting for even if they are just small red peppers growing in the dirt of a backyard in Colorado. I will keep growing my Boulder burners, and I will keep sharing my sauce with the people who are kind, and I will keep my gates locked just in case. But mostly, I will just keep living my life the way I want to and enjoying the peace that comes with knowing you have won the war. The story of Jessica Turner and the pepper thief is over, but the garden keeps on growing, and that is the most important part of all. I hope this story serves as an inspiration to others who feel like they are being pushed around by someone with a little bit of local power. You have more power than you think, especially if you know how to use what you have. Keep your head up and keep your garden green, and never let anyone take what you have worked so hard to build. That is the end of my tale, and it is a good one to tell on a cold night by the fire. I am going to go rest now, because tomorrow is a big day of planting, and I need my energy to make sure next year is even better than this one. The cycle of life continues, and the garden is always there waiting for the next season to begin, and I will be there to meet it with open arms and a very spicy plan for the future. I have already started looking at new types of seeds from around the world, and I think I might try to grow some giant pumpkins next year too, but they are much harder to steal than peppers, so I might not need a trap for those. But then again, you never know with people like Brenda, so I will be prepared for anything. I am signing off now, and I wish everyone a very peaceful and pest-free gardening season. Goodbye for now and stay spicy, my friends.